Hello, this is Douglas Robinson. I am a solutions consultant with Beyond 20. In this video, I'm going to be discussing how we can possibly escape the rule of two, or in a simpler sense, how we can act on data from one association while we are in another association. So an example of this, which I'm going to explore in this video, is going to be how can I act on every item in a relationship to task, for instance, or journal, for instance, while also having access to all of the data on the parent record, such as all of the data on an incident, or maybe all of the data that's related to that incident through the related customers or user infos. Because what we could do is we could store all of this data in variables or stored values while we're still on the incident association. And then when we move through our relationship to our child objects, we would have it, but this becomes inefficient. So if we have the majority of the data that we're acting on in our one step hosted under the parent association, such as incident, and we need just a single data point from, let's say, a collection of items in a relationship, then it becomes very difficult for us to, or it becomes very inefficient for us to get that data from that relationship and then act on it in a meaningful way. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to explore an option that we have using some of the features that are available in version 8 and up, or 8 and higher, to get around those limitations. So in this video, I am going to create a series of tasks. I'm going to name them Task 1, Task 2, and Task 3. And what I'm going to do with these tasks, once I'm done filling out details on my incident, is I'm going to act on these tasks. I want to perform an action on each of these tasks while also having access to all of the data on my incident record. So how can I do that? If I open up my one-step manager and I create a new one-step, while I'm in my one-step manager, my one-step editor, what I was mentioning earlier was that we could theoretically store all of the data on our parent object or our incident in many different stored values or variables, so that when we get down to our child object level, such as our individual task, we can use them at that level. And that's plausible. It's a feasible option, but it's not efficient when you get to the point where you're using 5, 10, or more different data points or fields on your incident or related items. What I'm going to cover in this video is going to be actually quite the opposite. Instead of taking information from the incident level down to the children of the relationship, once we move through our step through, sorry, wrong action, force of habit. Once we move through our step through children action on tasks, we're going to collect information from the child tasks, and we're going to store that data into a collection variable. In version 8 and higher, we have the option for a data type of XML collection. So I'm going to show you in this video how we can turn a collection of related items into a collection of XML elements and then act on it from a parent record. So here I'm naming this variable task collection. And I mentioned up here, I'm going to initialize or update the task collection. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first insert the current value of this task. And then, after I have the current value of this task, because I'm going to be stepping through each task and appending data to this variable, so I have a total or a collection or a concatenation of this data, I'm going to start writing out what I want this data to look like. So I need to think about what data points from the task I want to have access to from the parent association or from the incident. Now earlier, I only wrote out a task title. So in this example, I'm going to include a task with a title. So I'm going to start off by writing out a starting and ending element for task. So we can see that here. And then inside that task element, I'm going to create a title element. So I'm going to have a starting and ending tag for a title element. And inside that title element, I'm going to include the task title field. So now I have a step through children action that will step through each task. And for each task, I'm going to add the value of this XML element. So we're going to have a task element with a child title element with the title text. And that gets appended up into this XML variable. I'm going to leave this data type as XML. We will modify that to become a collection later on. And that's the only action that I need in my step through children action. So after we jump through all of the tasks and we collect that data into a variable, we move back up to the parent association. I'm going to include another updated variable or stored value on the incident association now. And you can tell by my name here for this action kind of what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my task collection and I'm going to actually turn it into an XML collection. So I have a list of task elements that will be created, and it's essentially going to look like task, task, task with the ending elements after it, of course, but we don't have, it's not really a collection, it's just a series of task elements. So a collection would be XML, and then I'm going to zoom this in so I can do indentation so this looks pretty, and then task, and task, and task with the text and ending elements, of course. And then at the end of it, we would break out the XML collection element like so, so that it would end. But we don't have that. We just have the insides for that variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this static text. I'm going to insert the variable that I worked on in the last one-step action tile or step that I was working on. I'm going to insert my task collection variable here. Now we have a collection. We have an XML element that contains a collection of task elements, which each have a title string element inside them that holds the title of the task that they were derived from. And this is important because we now have this data up here at the incident level, at the incident association. This data type needs to be XML collection because it is actually a collection of tasks. So now, what if I wanted to work with this data? Well, if I wanted to work with each task in this collection, I would add a step through collection action here, which I accidentally did earlier. This is different from a step through children action in that the step through collection action steps through a collection of XML or JSON elements. We chose XML, not JSON. That'll be a separate video at some point in time. But here, I'm going to work with my modified task collection, which is this variable right here. And it's going to step through every child element it finds in this XML element with child task elements in it. And when we do that, we'll have an item variable name. Because this isn't an object within Cherwell that we're stepping through like a task would be, we have an item variable name. And this is going to be the current item, the current task and title and text item in this collection. And that's important. So I'm going to name our item variable name current task element. And then I'm going to drill down into my step through collection action. I'm going to rename this step through tasks, by the way. You should always have very descriptive names for your one-step actions so that you can realize what you were doing 6 months down the road. So now I have a step through collection action. I'm stepping through each task in my collection. If I want to act on this data, I'm going to strip out the title for the current task. So I'm going to have a variable name called current title. It's going to be of data type text, and I'm going to pull out the title text from the title element in my current task. To do that, I'm going to take my current task element variable that's initialized here in my step through collection action, and I'm going to place a modifier on it. This modifier is going to be one of several nice, shiny, new XML modifiers, and I'm going to choose string from element. Now you may be asking yourself right here, hey, wait, what's the difference between string from element and string from attribute? And I will happily pause for a second to explain that. When we declare our XML element over here, you'll notice I broke out title as a separate tag and end tag. That's an element in XML. An attribute would be if we wrote out title equals and then had quotes there with a value such as this. So this right here would be an attribute as far as XML is concerned within Cherwell, and the title is a separate element. So when you're performing your action and you have a modifier on an XML variable or stored value or other type of XML, you'll want a string from element attribute or a modifier to grab or to pull out the text within an element. So in this case, I'm going to write out title. Important note here, you do not need to, and I will reiterate, you should not put the starting and ending brackets around your element name. They're not required, and if you do so, it will not find that element because it strips those characters out for you. So we'll leave this as title. Now our one step has a variable to get the current title of each task in the collection of tasks that we've created. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's great, but this is redundant, and essentially I've just stepped through tasks twice and I don't see the benefits of doing so. Why have you made me do this? The answer, of course, is if we perform an update a business object action, or if we perform another action, our current association is not task. Our current association is incident. So we can update information on an incident, or we can reference data on an incident from or while we're working on a task without losing that kind of access. So if I wanted to, I could include my current title of a task in a pop-up, and then I could also include data such as the incident ID, which this is a poor example because I know you can get this from a task if you either auto-populate it down into the task or if you have a reverse relationship. But I can do that. I can have the incident ID at the same time. I can have any of the incidents related objects such as the customer's data, like a customer's full name at the same time. Now we're at 3 different associations here. We've got task information, we've got the parent incident association, we've got the parent incidents related customers information. We can go one further and we can start pulling data out of our related user info or our related owner's profile. So we can grab the user info's email address. And we can take all of this data and we can act on it in meaningful ways. So for each task, you may want to send an email to the task owner saying, you know, here's your task, it's been assigned to you. Here's the task ID and here's the task title and the task description, but I'm also going to send you a compiled list of data from a related incident, and I need to have all of that data on the incident. This is a way that you could do that. So you could, if you had a send an email action or a similar action doing something else, insert a majority of your data from the parent object, such as an incident, and still have access to your current data in the current task. So I'm going to get rid of this send an email action, and I'm just going to show you a pop-up here. So this pop-up is going to have the title of one of our tasks that we stepped through. And I have 3 tasks, so this is going to repeat 3 times. And then the parent incident ID, the incident's customer, and the owner's email address. I'm going to make sure, okay, I have a customer, I have an owner. This owner does not have an email address, so I'll select one that does. All right, so now I'll perform my one step. Oh no, I made a mistake. I like making mistakes on videos. It helps us identify errors. And it helps us learn how to troubleshoot errors. So, well, I'm going to have to pull out the old system analyzer on this one. I do believe I ran into this just the other day on a similar project. So we're getting an object reference not set to an instance of an object at the point in time that we step through children on tasks. I'm going to save this incident. Then I'm going to casually update my step through children action here. I believe I'll just have it reload data in that relationship. We're still getting that error message. That's very strange. So we have an order, which is default. We only have one relationship to tasks. If I step through children here, on my task, I have a variable name called task collection. I'm going to change this data type to text and see if that helps. It shouldn't make a difference. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click close, and I was a fool and closed my system analyzer. So I'm going to open it again and run my one step again. Aha! I have a pop-up. So if you're following along and you stayed on the video this long, keep your variable data type as task at first. You can turn it into an XML collection later. So I have task 1, and on that pop-up I also have the incident ID, I have the customer's name, I could also include other customer data that I'm working on, and I have the owner's email address. And this is going to repeat a couple of times. I also have the same data for task 2, and I also have that data for task 3. So as you can see, this is an interesting alternative or an interesting option that you have as far as working with child and parent business object data all at once. So you don't have to, for instance, I'm going to open up my one step because I'm not sure I thoroughly described the issue earlier. If you're inside your step through children action, the values that you have here are all evaluated from a task perspective. So you have task fields, and then you have a change request set of fields if your task is owned by a change request. You might have incident fields if your task is owned by an incident, but you don't have anything else that's related to the incident while you're working with tasks. So if you have a need for specific customer information, you would otherwise have to put it into a variable or many variables, and that issue just compounds if you then have to work with a problem that's related to an incident. Problem here actually would be problem owning a task, not problem linked to an incident that owns a task. So hopefully this gets your minds thinking about what you can accomplish with functionality like this with the new XML stored values, variable data types, and modifiers. If you have any questions about this, feel free to post them on our YouTube channel or send us a tweet out at Twitter. If you'd like to, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/beyond20llc. And yeah, that's about it. Have a nice day. Bye.